The notification pinged at exactly 11:47 p.m. I stared at my laptop screen, my hands trembling as I watched the typing indicator appear, disappear, then appear again. It had been less than 4 minutes since I'd sent the first message from the fake profile. 4 minutes. My husband of 7 years was in our bedroom, supposedly working late on a presentation. The blue light from his phone screen cast shadows on the wall visible through the crack in the door. Another notification. He'd responded. My finger hovered over the screenshot button as I read his reply, and something inside me shattered so completely that I knew there would be no putting the pieces back together the same way. But I took that screenshot anyway. Then another. And another. I would need every single one of them. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The first whisper of doubt crept into my mind on a perfectly ordinary Tuesday morning. Derek had left his phone on the kitchen counter while he showered, something he never did anymore. For months, that device had been glued to his palm, face down on every surface, password protected with a code he'd changed without telling me. I wasn't the type of wife who checked phones or demanded access to private conversations. Trust had always been the foundation of our marriage, or so I believed. But that morning, watching steam curl under the bathroom door while his phone sat there silent and available, something compelled me to look. I didn't pick it up. Not then. Instead, I stood there with my coffee growing cold, arguing with myself about privacy and paranoia. We'd built a good life together in our Denver neighborhood, a charming craftsman house with a garden I'd spent 3 years cultivating. Derek worked in sales for a tech company, traveling frequently but always coming home with stories and small gifts. I worked as a graphic designer for Altitude Marketing Group, a job that challenged me creatively even if it didn't make me wealthy. We had couple friends, weekend routines, inside jokes that made us laugh until our sides hurt. We were solid. We were fine. Except we weren't fine, and I'd been pretending not to notice for longer than I wanted to admit. The changes had been gradual enough that I dismissed each one individually. Derek started going to the gym before work, transforming his body with a dedication he'd never shown before. He bought new clothes, updated his hairstyle, paid attention to cologne and skincare. When I complimented these improvements, he'd shrug and mention feeling better about himself, wanting to stay healthy. Nothing suspicious about a man taking care of himself, right? Then came the late nights at the office, the weekend conferences, the business dinners that ran past midnight. His company was expanding, he explained. New clients demanded attention. I wanted to be supportive, understanding. I didn't want to be the nagging wife who questioned every absence. But then there were the small cruelties that cut deeper than suspicion. Derek stopped asking about my day. Conversations that once flowed naturally now felt forced, perfunctory. He'd scroll through his phone while I talked, offering distracted hums instead of engaged responses. Our intimate life dwindled from passionate to obligatory to nearly non-existent. When I tried to discuss it, he claimed stress and exhaustion, promising things would improve once this busy season ended. The busy season never ended. My best friend Kelsey noticed before I fully acknowledged it myself. We met for lunch at Harvest Kitchen on a Friday afternoon, and she studied my face with the concern only a friend of 15 years can muster. "You look tired," she said gently. Not just physically tired but soul tired. When I deflected with jokes about work deadlines, she leaned across the table and asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Is everything okay with Derek?" The careful neutrality in her voice told me she suspected something specific. I wanted to defend him, to insist our marriage was strong, but sitting there under her knowing gaze, the pretense crumbled. "I don't know," I admitted quietly. "Something feels different but I can't point to anything concrete. He hasn't done anything wrong exactly. He's just not really there anymore even when he's standing right next to me." Kelsey reached for my hand. "Trust your instincts, Natalie. Women always know. We just talk ourselves out of knowing because the truth is scarier than the uncertainty." Her words planted themselves in my mind like seeds, growing roots that spread through my thoughts over the following days. That weekend, I decided to pay attention. Really pay attention. Derek came home Saturday afternoon from a supposed golf outing with clients, but his golf clubs sat untouched in the garage, the same light layer of dust coating the bag that had been there for weeks. When I mentioned it casually, asking how his game went, he launched into detailed descriptions of holes played and scores achieved without missing a beat. The ease of his lying was almost more disturbing than the lie itself. Sunday morning, I woke early and watched him sleep, studying the face I'd known for nearly a decade. He looked peaceful, younger somehow in rest, and I felt a wave of affection mixed with grief for what we'd been. When had we stopped being a team? When had the distance grown too wide to cross with simple conversation? I wanted to wake him, to demand honesty, to ask if he still loved me or if I'd become just a comfortable habit he hadn't bothered to break. Instead, I slipped out of bed and made coffee, scrolling mindlessly through social media while dread pooled in my stomach. Monday brought clarity in the cruelest possible way. Derek left for work early, kissing my forehead with the same absent affection he'd shown for months. I had the day off and spent it trying to focus on a freelance design project, but concentration eluded me. Around noon, I gave in to the impulse I'd been fighting. I opened my laptop and created a fake profile on a dating app Derek had mentioned his single colleagues used for networking, though everyone knew its real purpose. The woman I created was nothing like me. Where I was naturally brunette with minimal makeup and a preference for casual comfortable clothing, she was blonde, glamorous, professionally photographed. I used stock images from a modeling site, creating a persona named Vanessa Cole. Her profile listed interests in hiking, craft cocktails, and travel. She worked in marketing, loved adventure, and was new to Denver after relocating from Seattle. She was everything a man looking for excitement might want, carefully crafted to appeal without being obvious. My hands shook as I adjusted her age to 32, 3 years younger than me, and selected preferences that would show her profile to men in Derek's age range and location. This is crazy, I told myself. I'm inventing problems where none exist. I'm violating trust and privacy over nothing more than a feeling. But I completed the profile anyway and set it live, telling myself I'd delete it within the hour, that this momentary insanity would pass and I'd forget I'd ever doubted my husband. I didn't have to search for Derek. The app's algorithm, designed to connect people with similar interests and proximity, served his profile to me within minutes of browsing. There he was, smiling in a photo I didn't recognize, taken recently based on his current hairstyle and the shirt I'd watched him buy last month. His profile name was just his first name and middle initial, Derek J., vague enough for plausible deniability if discovered. His bio was brief but revealing. Looking for genuine connection and adventure. Life's too short for pretending. Open to seeing where things lead naturally. The words hit me like physical blows. Genuine connection. As if what we had was fake. Adventure and seeing where things lead, as if our marriage was a dead end he needed to escape. I took a screenshot of his profile, my first piece of evidence, though I didn't yet know I was building a case. Then I closed the laptop and walked away, needing distance from what I'd discovered. I spent the afternoon in our garden, pulling weeds with aggressive intensity, trying to process what this meant. Having a dating profile didn't necessarily mean he'd acted on it. Maybe he was just browsing, curious, not serious. Maybe his colleagues had set it up as a joke. The rationalizations felt weak even as I constructed them, but I wasn't ready to face the full implications. Not yet. Derek came home at his usual time, kissing my cheek and complaining about traffic while he loosened his tie. We ate the dinner I'd prepared, discussing nothing of consequence. He mentioned an upcoming trip to Seattle for a conference, and my stomach clenched at the mention of the city I'd listed in Vanessa's fake profile. Coincidence, I told myself. Seattle was a major tech hub. Conferences happened there constantly. But doubt gnawed at me through the meal and into the evening as we sat on separate ends of the couch, Derek absorbed in his phone while a show I'd chosen played on the television unwatched. That night, after Derek fell asleep, I retrieved my laptop and opened the dating app. Vanessa's profile had received dozens of likes and several messages from various men. I ignored them all, fingers hovering over Derek's profile picture. What would it prove if I reached out? What would it accomplish besides confirming what I already suspected? But I thought about Kelsey's words, about trusting my instincts, and about the stack of small deceptions that had accumulated into this moment. I typed a simple message. Hey Derek, I noticed we have some similar interests. Your profile caught my attention. How's your Monday been? I stared at the words for a full minute before hitting send at 11:43 p.m. Then I waited, laptop open, watching for a response I desperately hoped wouldn't come. The typing indicator appeared at 11:47 p.m. 4 minutes. He'd been asleep beside me, or so I'd thought, but apparently had been scrolling through the app in the dark. My heart hammered as his reply loaded. Hey Vanessa, thanks for reaching out. Monday was long, but ending it talking to someone interesting makes it better. I'm intrigued by your profile. New to Denver? How are you finding it so far? I took a screenshot, hands steadier now as shock gave way to cold clarity. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Then I responded, keeping Vanessa's voice light and engaging. Still getting my bearings but excited for fresh starts. Your profile mentioned adventure. What does that look like for you? His reply came faster this time. I think adventure is about breaking out of routine, trying new experiences, connecting with people authentically. I've been stuck in patterns that don't fit anymore and I'm ready for something real. Screenshot. Another message from him followed immediately. This might be forward, but there's something about your energy I'm drawn to. Would you want to meet for coffee sometime this week? No pressure, but I'd love to continue this conversation in person. I stopped breathing. A coffee date. He was actively pursuing another woman, or who he thought was another woman, while I lay 10 feet away in our shared bedroom. The betrayal was so blatant, so careless, that I almost laughed at the absurdity. How many times had he done this before? How many Vanessas had there actually been? I took 3 more screenshots of the conversation, then carefully documented his profile details, his photos, every word he'd written. Finally, I responded. Coffee sounds lovely. How about Thursday afternoon? There's a place called the Roasted Bean in the Pearl District I've been wanting to try. His reply was enthusiastic, suggesting 2 o'clock and promising he'd rearrange his schedule to make it work. We exchanged a few more pleasantries before I said goodnight, claiming an early morning ahead. I closed the laptop and sat in the darkness of our living room, listening to Derek snore softly down the hall. The man I'd married, the man I'd trusted with every vulnerable part of myself, was actively cheating or at minimum pursuing someone he believed was a stranger. The evidence was damning and clear. But rather than confronting him immediately, rather than waking him with accusations and tears, I felt something unexpected settle over me. Calm determination. If Derek wanted to play games, I'd let him. But I'd document everything, build an irrefutable case, and when the time came to present it, he wouldn't be able to lie or manipulate or explain away what he'd done. The next morning, I woke before Derek and went through my normal routine with eerie composure. I made coffee, dressed for work, packed my lunch. When Derek emerged from the bedroom, I greeted him with a smile that felt like a mask. He kissed me goodbye without really looking at me, already mentally wherever his mind spent its time these days. As soon as his car pulled out of the driveway, I called Kelsey. She answered on the second ring, immediately sensing something in my voice. What happened? I gave her the abbreviated version, my words flat and factual. Created fake profile, found Derek on dating app, he messaged back within minutes, arranged to meet for coffee Thursday. Silence stretched between us before Kelsey exhaled sharply. Oh Natalie, I'm so sorry. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, I admitted. Part of me wants to skip work, pack his things, and leave them on the lawn. But a bigger part of me wants to see how far he'll take this. I need to know if this is a one-time thing or if my entire marriage has been a lie. Kelsey's response was immediate and practical. Document everything and talk to a lawyer before you do anything else. You need to protect yourself legally and financially. Do you want me to come over? Her offer touched something tender in my chest, but I declined. I need to sit with this for a bit, figure out my next steps. But thank you for not saying I told you so. I would never, she said softly. I'm here whenever you need me, any hour, for anything. We ended the call with promises to talk later, and I sat in my quiet house surrounded by the life Derek and I had built, wondering how much of it had been real and how much had been performance. Wednesday passed in a blur of normalcy that felt surreal. I went to work, completed design projects, attended meetings. My colleagues noticed nothing amiss because I'd become skilled at compartmentalizing, at functioning through emotional turmoil. Derek texted me midday asking what I wanted for dinner, as if he hadn't spent the previous night flirting with another woman. I suggested takeout from our favorite Thai place, and he sent back a heart emoji, a small gesture that once would have made me smile but now felt hollow. That evening, over pad thai and spring rolls, Derek mentioned his Seattle trip had been moved up to Friday. Last-minute client emergency, he explained, not meeting my eyes. I'll probably be gone through the weekend. I nodded sympathetically, asking appropriate questions about the situation while my mind raced. Was there really a client emergency or was he planning to meet someone there? Vanessa had listed Seattle as her previous city. Was that connection deliberate on his part? After dinner, while Derek showered, I logged into Vanessa's profile and sent him another message. I've been thinking about our coffee date. I'm actually going to be traveling this weekend for work, but I'm really looking forward to meeting you soon. Rain check. His response came through while I watched television, Derek sitting beside me in his bathrobe, phone angled away from me. No problem at all, totally understand. I'm actually heading out of town this weekend too. Maybe we can meet up when we're both back. The timing will work out even better. I took another screenshot, adding it to my growing folder of evidence. The lies were piling up now, each one easy to prove, impossible for him to explain away. But I still wasn't ready to confront him. Some instinct told me to wait, to gather more, to build a case so airtight that he couldn't spin or minimize what he'd done. Thursday morning brought unexpected clarity. I woke early, made coffee, and opened my laptop to check my email. Among the usual work communications and spam, I found a message from Kelsey with a subject line that read "Simply call me." Inside was a single line and a phone number. Gordon Steele, divorce attorney. Friend of my cousin. He's expecting your call and will give you a free consultation. The word divorce hit me hard, making everything suddenly real in a way it hadn't been before. I'd been operating in a strange limbo, collecting evidence of Derek's betrayal but not fully processing what it meant for my future. Now Kelsey, practical and clear-eyed as always, was pushing me to face the inevitable conclusion. If my marriage was over, and the evidence suggested it was, I needed to protect myself. I called Gordon Steele's office at 9 a.m. sharp. His secretary connected me immediately, and his voice came through warm but professional. Mrs. Harper, Kelsey Brooks mentioned you might be reaching out. I understand you're dealing with a difficult situation. Why don't you tell me what's going on? I walked him through the timeline, the fake profile, the messages, Derek's lies about his travel and whereabouts. Gordon listened without interrupting, then asked pointed questions about our finances, assets, whether we had children, how long we'd been married. Colorado is a no-fault divorce state, he explained after I'd answered his questions, but evidence of infidelity can still impact settlements, especially regarding spousal support and asset division. The screenshots you've taken are good. I'd recommend continuing to document everything. If he's traveling this weekend supposedly for work, try to verify whether that's true. Phone records, credit card statements, any concrete evidence of where he actually is versus where he claims to be. Do you have access to joint accounts? I did. Derek and I had always maintained transparency about finances, with shared access to bank accounts and credit cards. We'd never had secrets about money, which made his other secrets feel even more violating. I can get you statements, I confirmed. We have everything linked through a joint account management app. Gordon's approval was audible. Perfect. Gather everything you can, bank statements, credit card charges, phone records if accessible. Create a timeline of his activities versus his stated whereabouts. The more documentation you have, the stronger your position will be. Then, when you're ready, we'll file. The clinical discussion of dismantling my marriage should have broken me, but instead it provided structure to my spiraling thoughts. I thanked Gordon, promised to be in touch soon, and ended the call feeling more grounded than I had since discovering Derek's profile. I had a plan now, steps to follow, a way to channel my hurt and anger into productive action. Friday morning, Derek left for the airport with a rolling suitcase and promises to call when he landed. I smiled and kissed him goodbye, watching him drive away before immediately opening our financial management app. His credit card charges populated in real time, and I began taking screenshots of everything. The Uber to the airport, a coffee at the terminal, the plane ticket to Seattle. So far, his story held up. But Saturday morning brought a different picture. A charge appeared at a restaurant in Seattle, an expensive steakhouse I recognized from a food show we'd watched together. The timestamp showed 8 p.m. dinner for two based on the total amount. Then came a charge at a boutique hotel, not the business chain his company typically booked, but a trendy spot known for its romantic ambience. I screenshotted everything, my hands steady despite the nausea rolling through me. Sunday brought more evidence. Brunch at a waterfront cafe, admission to an art museum, another night at the hotel. Derek was on a romantic weekend getaway while telling me he was managing a client crisis. I waited for him to contact me, curious what lies he'd construct. His texts were sparse and perfunctory. Long days at the client site, sorry I've been out of touch, miss you. Each message felt like an insult, casual cruelty delivered with thoughtless ease. When Derek returned Sunday night, dragging his suitcase through the door with exaggerated exhaustion, I greeted him with concern I didn't feel. Rough weekend? I asked, taking his coat. You look tired. He collapsed onto the couch with theatrical weariness. Brutal, he confirmed. Back-to-back meetings, difficult clients, barely slept. I'm glad to be home. He reached for my hand, and I let him take it, wondering if he could feel how thoroughly he destroyed whatever trust had existed between us. I spent that week moving through my days on autopilot while my mind raced with plans. I met with Gordon Steele in person, presenting my folder of evidence, screenshots of the dating app conversations, credit card statements that contradicted Derek's claims, a timeline I'd meticulously constructed. Gordon reviewed everything with the careful attention of someone who'd seen countless versions of this story. This is solid documentation, he said finally. Very thorough. When you're ready to proceed, we can file immediately. Colorado requires a 91-day waiting period for divorce, but we can get the paperwork started whenever you say. Not yet, I told him. There's something I need to do first. I didn't fully understand my own reluctance to pull the trigger on filing. Part of it was fear of the unknown, of becoming a divorced woman at 35 and starting over from nothing. But a bigger part was the growing sense that I deserved more than just a clean legal exit. I deserved to reclaim my power, my sense of self, my confidence that Derek had slowly eroded over months of lies and neglect. I needed to transform myself before I could walk away, to prove that his betrayal hadn't broken me but had instead freed me to become someone stronger. I called Kelsey that evening and asked her to meet me for coffee the next morning. We sat in a corner booth at the Roasted Bean, ironically the same location where Vanessa was supposed to meet Derek, and I laid out everything I'd discovered. Kelsey listened with growing anger, her knuckles white around her mug. What are you going to do? She asked when I finished. I'm leaving, I said simply. Not just Derek but Denver. I can't rebuild my life in a city where every street reminds me of our marriage, where I might run into him and whatever woman he ends up with. I need distance and a fresh start somewhere he isn't part of the landscape. Kelsey nodded slowly, processing this. Where will you go? Portland, I answered, surprising myself with how quickly the decision had formed. My college roommate lives there and has been asking me to visit for years. The design scene is strong, the city has good energy, and it's far enough away that I won't accidentally encounter my old life. Kelsey reached across the table and squeezed my hand. When do you leave? Soon, I told her. I'm giving myself 2 weeks to get everything in order. I've already started looking at apartments online and reaching out to design contacts there. I have some freelance clients who work remotely anyway, so I can take that income with me. I just need to pack up what matters and go. The determination in my voice surprised us both. 2 weeks ago I'd been a woman trying to save her marriage. Now I was calmly planning my exit strategy with the efficiency of someone who'd already grieved and moved on. That afternoon I opened a separate bank account in my name only and began transferring funds. Not enough that Derek would notice immediately, but enough to give me a financial cushion for the transition. I researched Portland neighborhoods, calculated cost of living differences, and created spreadsheets tracking my expenses and projected income. The practical planning kept my mind occupied and gave structure to what could have been overwhelming chaos. Derek noticed nothing. He moved through our house absorbed in his phone, his lies, his separate life. We existed in the same physical space but occupied completely different realities. Sometimes I watched him and wondered if he felt any guilt or if the ease of his deception came naturally. Had he always been this person, or had I simply been too trusting to notice? Wednesday evening I was reviewing apartment listings when Derek announced he had another trip coming up, this time to San Francisco for 3 days starting Monday. I made appropriate sounds of understanding while mentally adding another city to my list of places he might be conducting affairs. After he went to bed, I logged into Vanessa's profile and sent him a message. I hope you've been well. I'm still interested in that coffee date when our schedules align. How's your week looking? His response came within minutes despite the late hour. Been thinking about you actually. I'm traveling next week, but I'll be back Thursday. Want to finally meet up Friday afternoon? I agreed to the date, knowing I'd be long gone by then, but wanting to see how committed he was to this pursuit. We exchanged several more messages, Derek's tone growing increasingly flirtatious, suggesting drinks after coffee, maybe dinner if we hit it off. Each message was another nail in the coffin of our marriage, more evidence for the inevitable court proceedings. Thursday I gave notice at Altitude Marketing Group, citing family reasons and the need to relocate. My boss expressed disappointment but understanding, offering to serve as a reference and suggesting I stay connected for potential remote projects. I spent the day training my replacement and organizing files, closing out this chapter of my professional life with the same methodical efficiency I'd applied to everything else. Friday brought an unexpected complication. Derek's mother called asking if we could join her for dinner Sunday night before Derek's trip. She wanted to celebrate her birthday with family, and guilt twisted in my stomach as I made excuses about prior commitments. I'd always gotten along well with Claire, and the thought of her learning about her son's betrayals through divorce papers made me sad for her. But I couldn't sit through a family dinner pretending everything was fine, couldn't smile through birthday cake while knowing I'd be gone within days. The weekend passed in a strange fog. Derek and I moved around each other like polite strangers, our conversations limited to logistics and surface pleasantries. Saturday I began packing, choosing items carefully. The photo albums from our wedding and early marriage went into a box marked donate, those memories now too painful to preserve. I kept my grandmother's jewelry, my art supplies, my laptop and work equipment, clothes and personal items. Everything else, the furniture we'd chosen together, the kitchen gadgets from our registry, the decorative items that had made this house a home, I left behind. They belonged to a life I no longer wanted. Sunday evening while Derek packed for his San Francisco trip, I loaded my car with the boxes I'd hidden in the garage. Most of my belongings would fit in 3 trips, and I planned to make them Monday while he was traveling. Kelsey had agreed to help, and together we'd empty the house of my presence, leaving only a note explaining what Derek would discover eventually through legal channels. Monday morning I kissed Derek goodbye for the last time, though he didn't know it. He left for the airport talking about client presentations and conference sessions, completely unaware that his wife was about to vanish from his life. I waited until his Uber turned the corner before calling Kelsey. She arrived 20 minutes later with coffee and the determination of a friend who'd been waiting for this moment. We worked efficiently, loading my car and Kelsey's SUV with everything I'd designated as mine. The house looked strange with gaps where my belongings had been, picture hooks empty on walls, closet space suddenly abundant. In 3 hours we'd erased most evidence of my existence here, and the finality of it hit me as we loaded the last box. "This is really happening," I said aloud, and Kelsey hugged me tightly. "You're doing the right thing," she assured me. "You deserve so much better than a man who treats you like you're invisible." I nodded against her shoulder, allowing myself a moment of grief for the marriage I'd thought I had before straightening and wiping my eyes. I left a note on the kitchen counter, brief and direct. "Derek, I know about the dating apps, the lies about your trips, the other women. My lawyer will be in contact. Don't try to reach me. Natalie." The drive to Portland took just over 16 hours including stops, and I arrived Tuesday evening exhausted but oddly exhilarated. My college roommate Sophie met me at her apartment with wine and sympathy, offering her spare room for as long as I needed. We stayed up late talking, and I told her everything. Sophie listened with satisfying outrage on my behalf, calling Derek names that made me laugh despite everything. Wednesday morning I woke in an unfamiliar room in an unfamiliar city and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Portland stretched outside the window, gray and drizzling but full of possibility. I had no job beyond freelance projects, minimal savings, and no plan beyond getting away. But I also had freedom, clarity about my worth, and determination to build something better than what I'd left behind. I spent the first week exploring Portland, learning the neighborhoods and getting a feel for the city's rhythm. Sophie worked long hours at a tech startup, so I had days to myself to wander, to sit in coffee shops sketching, to remember who I'd been before marriage had consumed my identity. I'd always loved art, had dreamed of doing more with my design skills than corporate marketing materials. Now, with nothing to lose and everything to prove, I started working on a portfolio of personal projects, the kind of creative work that fed my soul rather than just paying bills. Finding an apartment proved more challenging than I'd anticipated. Portland's rental market was competitive and expensive, and my lack of local employment history worked against me. After 2 weeks of rejections, I finally secured a small studio in a converted warehouse building, the kind of space that attracted artists and musicians. It was smaller than I'd hoped and the heating was questionable, but it had good light and felt like mine in a way the Denver house never had. Moving my belongings from Sophie's apartment to my studio took a single afternoon, a stark reminder of how little I'd taken from my old life. I arranged my limited furniture, hung a few prints on the walls, and stood in the center of my new space feeling both vulnerable and empowered. This was the starting point of whatever came next, a blank canvas waiting for me to create something meaningful. Money became a pressing concern as my savings dwindled. Freelance work provided irregular income but not enough to sustain me long term. I needed something stable, at least temporarily, to fund this fresh start. I began applying for design positions at Portland agencies, but competition was fierce and my resume, while solid, didn't stand out among candidates with local connections and more diverse portfolios. 3 weeks into my Portland life, I found myself in a coffee shop called Daily Grind, working on a freelance logo project and nursing my second cup of cheap drip coffee to justify occupying the table. The place was busy with the lunch crowd, and I barely noticed when someone stopped beside my table. "Excuse me," a male voice said, "I don't mean to interrupt but I couldn't help noticing your work. That design is really striking." I looked up to find a man about my age, dressed in business casual with kind eyes and an apologetic smile. He gestured to my laptop screen where I had a draft logo displayed. "I'm Vincent Chen," he continued. "I run a digital marketing agency nearby and I'm always interested in connecting with talented designers. Do you have a card?" The question caught me off guard because I didn't have cards yet, hadn't thought I'd need them so soon. I fumbled for a response and ended up laughing at my own unpreparedness. "I just moved here from Denver and haven't gotten around to printing cards yet. I'm Natalie Harper, freelance designer currently working out of coffee shops until I can afford a proper desk." The honesty felt risky but also liberating, and Vincent's smile widened. "I respect the hustle," he said. "Coffee shop offices have produced some of the best creative work I've seen. Are you looking for freelance projects or something more permanent?" "Both," I admitted. "I'm open to whatever makes sense while I establish myself here." Vincent pulled out his phone and we exchanged contact information. "Send me your portfolio when you get a chance," he said. "We might have some project work available, and if your style fits what we do, maybe we can discuss something longer term. After he left, I sat staring at his contact information in my phone, wondering if I'd just experienced incredible luck or if Portland operated on a different networking frequency than Denver. Either way, I sent him my portfolio that evening along with a brief email explaining my background and interest in his agency. His response came the next morning asking if I was available to meet at his office Friday afternoon. Horizon Digital Solutions occupied the second floor of a renovated brick building in Portland's creative district. The space hummed with energy as I entered, young professionals clustered around computer screens, design mock-ups covering walls, the organized chaos of a successful agency. Vincent greeted me warmly and gave me a tour, introducing me to team members whose names I immediately forgot under the pressure of making a good impression. His office was less formal than I expected, decorated with concert posters and vintage cameras alongside the expected technology. We sat in chairs positioned more for conversation than intimidation, and Vincent asked about my background, my design philosophy, what I hope to achieve in Portland. I found myself being honest in a way I hadn't been in professional settings before, talking about wanting to do work that mattered rather than just collecting paychecks, about needing a fresh start after personal setbacks I didn't detail. Vincent listened with genuine attention, occasionally asking questions that showed he understood both the creative process and the business realities. "I have a proposition," he said finally. "We have more client work than our current team can handle comfortably, and I've been thinking about bringing in someone who could eventually develop into an art director role. The position would start as contract work, probably 20 to 30 hours a week, with the possibility of going full-time if it works out for both of us. The pay isn't amazing initially, but it's steady, and you'd have creative input beyond just executing someone else's vision." The offer felt almost too good to be true, arriving exactly when I needed it most. "What kind of clients?" I asked, trying to sound professional rather than desperately grateful. Vincent pulled up his laptop and showed me their portfolio. Sustainable businesses, local startups, non-profit organizations, companies doing work that aligned with values beyond profit. It was exactly the kind of meaningful work I'd craved, and I agreed to start the following Monday before I could overthink it. That weekend I allowed myself to feel cautiously optimistic for the first time since leaving Denver. I had housing, however modest, and now income that would let me stay. I deep cleaned my studio apartment, bought a small desk from a thrift store, and set up a workspace that felt professional despite its humble surroundings. Sunday evening I treated myself to dinner at a neighborhood restaurant, sitting alone with a book and a glass of wine, savoring the independence I'd fought so hard to achieve. My first week at Horizon Digital Solutions confirmed that I'd made the right choice. The work challenged me creatively while the team dynamic felt collaborative rather than competitive. Vincent proved to be an encouraging boss who provided guidance without micromanaging, trusting me to deliver quality work while allowing room for my own creative voice. By Friday I'd completed 3 client projects that received enthusiastic approval, and Vincent mentioned wanting to discuss expanding my hours. The personal side of my life remained complicated by the situation I'd left behind. Derek had been calling and texting constantly since discovering my note, messages cycling through confusion, anger, pleading, and back to anger. I'd blocked his number after the first day, but he'd started calling from other numbers, leaving voicemails I deleted without listening. Gordon Steele assured me this was normal behavior from someone who'd lost control of a narrative they'd been managing, and advised me to document the harassment but not engage. The divorce papers were filed in early November, delivered to Derek at the house we'd shared. Gordon called to confirm receipt and to tell me Derek's initial response had been predictably defensive. He's claiming the dating app was just curiosity, that he never actually met anyone, that you're overreacting. Standard denials. But our evidence is solid and Colorado's no-fault status means his excuses don't matter much legally. We should have this resolved within the required waiting period. Hearing about Derek's attempts to minimize what he'd done stirred anger I'd been suppressing. He'd systematically destroyed our marriage through lies and betrayal, yet he wanted to frame my departure as an overreaction, as if I was the unreasonable one for refusing to tolerate his deception. But I refused to let his revisionist history affect me. I had the screenshots, the credit card statements, the timeline of lies. I had proof of exactly who he was, and no amount of denial would change that reality. As autumn deepened into winter, I found my rhythm in Portland. Work at Horizon Digital Solutions expanded to full-time with benefits, and Vincent began including me in strategy meetings, valuing my input on creative direction. My studio apartment, while small, became a sanctuary I decorated with second-hand furniture and my own artwork. I made friends through work, joined a figure drawing group that met weekly, started running along the waterfront on Sunday mornings. Kelsey visited in December, staying for a long weekend and marveling at my transformation. "You seem lighter," she observed as we browsed Powell's City of Books. "Like you've shed weight that wasn't physical." I laughed but knew she was right. The constant anxiety of my marriage, the vigilance required to maintain a relationship with someone fundamentally dishonest, had been exhausting in ways I hadn't recognized until it was gone. The divorce progressed through its legal steps with minimal drama once Derek accepted that I wasn't coming back. His lawyer and mine negotiated asset division, and I walked away with my car, my personal belongings, and half the equity in our Denver house. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to provide stability while I built my new life. The final decree arrived in February, official notification that my marriage had been legally dissolved, and I felt relief more than sadness. Vincent and I had developed an easy friendship based on shared creative sensibilities and mutual respect. He was recently divorced himself, though his split had been more amicable than mine, the result of two people growing apart rather than betrayal. We often stayed late at the office working on projects, conversations drifting from professional to personal, discovering we had similar taste in music, books, and obscure documentaries. I didn't think of it as romantic interest at first. After Derek's betrayal, the idea of trusting someone with my heart again felt impossible. But gradually I noticed small things, the way Vincent always made sure I'd eaten during intense project periods, how he remembered details I'd mentioned in passing, the genuine enthusiasm he showed for my creative ideas. He made me feel valued in ways I'd forgotten were possible, seen in ways Derek had stopped seeing me years before our marriage officially ended. Spring arrived with cherry blossoms transforming Portland into something magical, and Vincent asked if I wanted to join him for a concert at the Crystal Ballroom. "It's not a date unless you want it to be," he clarified with endearing awkwardness. "I just thought you might enjoy the band and I hate going to shows alone." I agreed, telling myself it was just friends enjoying music together, nothing complicated or risky. The concert was transcendent, the kind of experience where music and crowd energy combine into something larger than the sum of parts. Vincent and I danced without self-consciousness, shouted lyrics we both knew, laughed at the absurdity of being the oldest people in a venue full of college students. Walking back to his car afterward, still buzzing with adrenaline and joy, he took my hand and I didn't pull away. "I should tell you something," he said as we stood in the parking lot, suddenly serious. "I value our professional relationship and our friendship too much to risk either one without being honest. I have feelings for you, Natalie. I've tried to ignore them because of our working situation and because I know you've been through a difficult divorce. But I also don't want to miss a chance at something real because I was too cautious. So I'm telling you, with no pressure and no expectations, that I care about you as more than a colleague or friend." His vulnerability, the risk he was taking, touched something in me that had been closed since Derek's betrayal. "I'm scared," I admitted. "My last relationship ended with so much deception that I don't trust my own judgment anymore. What if I'm wrong about you too? What if I'm seeing what I want to see instead of what's actually there?" Vincent nodded slowly, considering this. "Those are fair concerns," he said finally. "I can't promise I'm perfect or that I'll never disappoint you. But I can promise honesty and genuine care. If you're willing to take this slowly, to see where it goes without rushing, I'd like to try. We can keep it separate from work, maintain professional boundaries at the office. And if at any point you feel uncomfortable or want to stop, we stop. No questions, no consequences." The maturity of his approach, the respect for my boundaries and fears, felt like water after years of drought. "Okay," I heard myself say. "Let's try." Slowly. Vincent's smile transformed his face, and he squeezed my hand before letting go. Slowly, he agreed. "Starting with maybe another not date to see that documentary about urban planning you mentioned?" Our relationship developed with the caution of two people who'd been hurt before but wanted to believe in the possibility of something better. We kept it private initially, maintaining professional distance at work while gradually spending more time together outside the office. Vincent was patient with my hesitations, never pushing for more than I was ready to give, consistently demonstrating through actions rather than words that he valued me as a whole person rather than a trophy or convenience. By summer, Vincent and I had fallen into a comfortable rhythm that felt both exciting and stable. We spent weekends exploring Portland's neighborhoods, discovering hidden restaurants and vintage shops, taking day trips to the coast where we walked along beaches talking about everything and nothing. He introduced me to his friends, a welcoming group of creative professionals who accepted me without prying into my past. I met his younger brother Marcus, a software engineer who teased Vincent mercilessly but clearly adored him. The difference between this relationship and my marriage became increasingly apparent. Vincent asked questions and actually listened to the answers. He remembered my preferences, my goals, my casual mentions of things I enjoyed. When I talked about wanting to pursue more artistic projects beyond commercial work, he didn't dismiss it as impractical but instead helped me brainstorm ways to balance creative passion with financial stability. He celebrated my successes without trying to claim credit and supported me through setbacks without making them about himself. Work at Horizon Digital Solutions continued to flourish. Vincent promoted me to art director in August, a role that came with creative authority over major projects and mentorship responsibilities for junior designers. The promotion was based entirely on merit, he assured me privately. I wouldn't risk our personal relationship or your professional reputation by showing favoritism. You earned this through the quality of your work and your leadership with the team. The new position brought challenges that stretched my abilities in satisfying ways. I developed brand identities for startups, created marketing campaigns for environmental nonprofits, designed websites that balanced aesthetics with functionality. Each successful project built my confidence and my portfolio, proving to myself that I was capable of professional achievement independent of any relationship status. My friendship with Kelsey remained strong despite the distance. We talked weekly, and she planned another visit for October, eager to meet Vincent and see how my life had evolved. You sound genuinely happy, she said during one call. Not performing happiness or convincing yourself you're fine, but actually content. It's good to hear after everything you went through. Her observation made me realize how much I'd changed in the year since leaving Denver. The woman who'd created a fake dating profile to catch her husband cheating felt like a different person, someone younger and more naive. I'd learned to trust my instincts, to value myself enough to walk away from situations that diminished me, to build a life based on authenticity rather than obligation or fear. Vincent and I had been dating for 6 months when he suggested we take a weekend trip to Seattle. There's a design conference I'd like to attend, he explained, and I thought you might enjoy it too. Plus Seattle has amazing food and we could explore the city together. I agreed immediately, excited for the adventure, then felt a strange twist of irony remembering that Seattle was where Derek had claimed to be for work while actually conducting an affair. The conference proved inspiring, filled with innovative designers and thoughtful discussions about the intersection of creativity and social responsibility. Vincent and I attended sessions together, then split up to pursue different interests, meeting afterward to share what we'd learned. The trust implicit in that separation, the security of knowing neither of us was using the trip as cover for deception, felt like a quiet victory over my past. Saturday evening we had dinner at a waterfront restaurant with views of the Sound. Vincent was unusually nervous, fumbling with his water glass and making uncharacteristic small talk. Finally he set down his menu and reached across the table for my hand. I have something I want to discuss and I'm worried about the timing, but I also don't want to wait if it's the right thing, he said in a rush. My stomach clenched with irrational fear. You're breaking up with me, I blurted out, immediately regretting the assumption. Vincent's eyes widened in surprise. What? No, the opposite actually. He took a breath and started again. I'm in love with you, Natalie. I know we agreed to take things slowly and I don't want to pressure you, but I've been thinking about our future and I wanted you to know where I stand. I see a life with you, a real partnership built on mutual respect and shared values. I'm not asking you to decide anything tonight, just telling you that I'm all in if you want that too. Relief and joy flooded through me in equal measure. I love you too, I said, surprised by how easily the words came. I'd been afraid to say it, afraid of being vulnerable again after Derek. But what we have feels fundamentally different, safer somehow while also being more real. Vincent's smile was brilliant as he squeezed my hand. So we're doing this? Building something together? We're doing this, I confirmed, and the commitment felt right in a way my marriage never had. This wasn't about conforming to expectations or following a prescribed timeline. It was two people who'd been broken by past relationships choosing to be brave enough to try again with each other. The rest of the weekend had a dreamlike quality, both of us giddy with the newness of having declared our feelings. We explored Pike Place Market, took a ferry to Bainbridge Island, stayed up late in our hotel room talking about hopes and plans for the future. Vincent wanted to eventually expand Horizon Digital Solutions into a full-service creative agency. I shared my dream of one day teaching design while maintaining a freelance practice focused on projects that mattered to me. Our visions complemented rather than competed, two individuals building something together without losing themselves in the process. Returning to Portland felt like coming home in a way Denver never had. My studio apartment was too small for two people to spend much time in, but Vincent's house in the Richmond neighborhood became a second home where I kept clothes and toiletries, where we cooked dinner together and worked on separate laptops at his dining table. The domesticity felt natural rather than suffocating, probably because we'd built our relationship on a foundation of honesty and individual identity. Kelsey's October visit coincided with my birthday, and Vincent suggested we throw a small dinner party to celebrate. Nothing fancy, he said, just our close friends and Kelsey so she can meet everyone. I loved the idea of marking this milestone surrounded by the community I'd built in Portland, people who knew me as Natalie the designer and friend rather than Natalie the divorced woman or Natalie the daughter who disappointed her family. The dinner party was intimate and warm, held at Vincent's house with a menu we'd prepared together. Kelsey charmed everyone with stories from our college years, carefully edited to be amusing rather than embarrassing. Vincent's friends welcomed her like she was already part of our circle. After dinner, as we moved to the living room with wine and dessert, Vincent stood and cleared his throat for attention. I know this is Natalie's birthday and I don't want to steal focus, he began, but there's something I want to say while we're all together. He turned to face me directly. A year and a half ago, a talented designer walked into my favorite coffee shop and changed my life, though I didn't know it yet. Natalie, you've challenged me to be better both professionally and personally. You've shown me what real partnership looks like, built on trust and mutual support rather than compromise or sacrifice. I'm better with you than I am alone, and I want to keep being better together for as long as you'll have me. He dropped to one knee and my breath caught as he pulled a small box from his pocket. I know we've only been together officially for 6 months, but I've never been more certain of anything. Natalie Harper, will you marry me? The ring he revealed was perfect, a simple sapphire surrounded by small diamonds, elegant without being ostentatious. The room had gone silent and I was aware of our friends watching, of Kelsey's hands pressed to her mouth, of Vincent's hopeful nervous expression as he waited for my answer. Every logical part of my brain screamed that this was too fast, that I'd been divorced less than a year, that I should be cautious after what happened with Derek. But a deeper knowing, the same instinct that had told me to leave Denver and had led me to Portland, said this was right. Yes, I said, my voice steady despite tears streaming down my face. Yes, I'll marry you. Vincent slipped the ring on my finger and stood to kiss me while our friends erupted in cheers and applause. Kelsey hugged us both, whispering in my ear that she'd never seen me look so genuinely happy. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and champagne toasts, everyone celebrating not just our engagement but the love story that had grown from two damaged people willing to risk their hearts again. That night, after our guests had left and Kelsey had gone to her hotel, Vincent and I sat on his back porch wrapped in blankets against the October chill. Were you serious about the timeline? I asked. 6 months of dating before proposing? Vincent considered the question carefully before answering. I know it seems fast by conventional standards, he said. But I also know the difference between rushing into something because of infatuation versus recognizing something real when you find it. We've both been married before. We've both experienced what it looks like when relationships fail. I think that gives us better judgment about what actually works. I leaned against his shoulder, feeling the solid reality of him, the steadiness that characterized everything about our relationship. I agree, I said. And I don't want to wait long to actually get married. I've already done the big traditional wedding once and it ended in divorce. This time I want something that reflects who we actually are rather than what we're supposed to do. Vincent kissed the top of my head. What would that look like for you? I thought about it, imagining various scenarios. Something small and meaningful, I decided. Maybe just close friends and family, somewhere beautiful but not fussy. A celebration of us rather than a performance for others. Vincent nodded against my hair. That sounds perfect. How do you feel about spring? Cherry blossoms and new beginnings? The symbolism appealed to me immediately. Spring wedding it is, I agreed. We'll figure out the details but keep it simple and authentic. Vincent pulled me closer and we sat in comfortable silence, watching stars appear in the clear night sky, both of us content with the future we were planning together. Planning a wedding while working full-time and managing a relationship proved more complex than I'd anticipated, but Vincent approached it with the same thoughtful partnership he brought to everything else. We divided responsibilities based on our strengths and preferences, checking in regularly to ensure we were still aligned on the vision. Neither of us wanted to spend a fortune on a single day, so we focused on elements that mattered most to us and simplified everything else. The guest list remained deliberately small, just 30 people including Vincent's family, my friends from Portland, and Kelsey flying in from Denver. I sent an invitation to my parents more out of obligation than hope, uncertain whether they'd even respond after my departure and divorce. My mother called 2 weeks later, her voice carefully neutral as she congratulated me and confirmed they would attend. I noticed she didn't ask about Vincent or express happiness for me, just accepted the facts I'd presented with the same cool distance that had characterized our relationship for years. Work continued to be fulfilling as Vincent and I maintained clear boundaries between our professional and personal lives. At the office we were colleagues who respected each other's expertise. Only our closest team members knew about our engagement, and we were careful not to let our relationship affect business decisions or team dynamics. The separation felt important, preserving the independence and professional identity I'd fought to establish. Winter passed in a flurry of wedding preparations mixed with the normal rhythms of work and daily life. Vincent and I fell into domestic patterns that felt both exciting and comfortable, learning each other's habits and preferences, navigating minor disagreements with the communication skills we'd both developed through previous relationship failures. When tensions arose, we addressed them directly rather than letting resentment build. When one of us needed space, the other respected it without taking it personally. The relationship required effort and intention but never felt like struggle, more like two people committed to growing together rather than apart. My artistic practice expanded during this period as I made time for personal projects alongside professional work. I started a series of mixed media pieces exploring themes of transformation and reinvention, visual representations of the journey from heartbreak to wholeness. Several pieces were accepted into a group show at a local gallery, my first public exhibition, and the opening reception drew a surprising crowd including art collectors and critics. Vincent stood slightly back during the reception, letting me shine in my own accomplishment, proud but not possessive. One piece in particular generated significant interest, a large canvas combining photography, painting, and collage that depicted a woman walking away from a burning house toward a city skyline at dawn. The symbolism was obvious but effective, capturing both destruction and hope, endings and beginnings. A collector offered to purchase it for more than I'd ever earned from a single artwork, and the validation felt profound. I was building a creative practice independent of my commercial work, proving to myself that the artistic dreams I'd suppressed during my marriage were achievable. March brought unseasonably warm weather and the early emergence of cherry blossoms throughout Portland. Vincent and I had chosen a small venue in the Japanese garden for our ceremony, an intimate space that held meaning for both of us. We'd spent several dates there during our courtship, walking the paths and talking for hours, so it felt appropriate to exchange vows in a place that had witnessed our relationship develop. The week before the wedding, my parents arrived in Portland and requested dinner with just the three of us before the celebration. I agreed reluctantly, bringing Vincent for moral support despite my mother's suggestion that we meet alone. We gathered at a quiet restaurant, and the conversation was predictably stiff and awkward as we navigated topics safe enough for my parents' comfort. Finally my mother set down her wine glass and addressed me directly. "Your father and I want to understand what happened with Derek," she said. "We were shocked when we received the divorce papers. He told us you left without warning over a misunderstanding that could have been resolved through communication." The implicit criticism stung but didn't surprise me. Of course Derek had positioned himself as the victim, my departure as irrational overreaction. "It wasn't a misunderstanding," I said evenly. "Derek was actively pursuing other women through dating apps while lying about his whereabouts and activities. I have extensive documentation including messages, credit card statements, and a timeline of his deceptions. I left because staying would have meant accepting behavior I wasn't willing to tolerate." My mother's expression shifted to something between disbelief and discomfort. "Surely you could have tried counseling or given him a chance to explain before destroying your marriage." Vincent's hand found mine under the table as I struggled to maintain composure. "I didn't destroy our marriage," I corrected. "Derek did that through his choices. I simply refused to pretend it wasn't happening." My mother opened her mouth to argue but my father touched her arm, a rare intervention in our family dynamic. "Claire," he said quietly, "perhaps this isn't the time or our place. Natalie made a decision about her own life and seems happy now. Maybe we should focus on celebrating that." The unexpected support from my father caught me off guard and I saw my mother's surprise as well. She pressed her lips together but nodded, turning the conversation to safer topics like our wedding plans and Vincent's business. The rest of dinner proceeded without incident, though the unspoken tensions remained beneath the surface of polite conversation. Driving home afterward, Vincent asked how I was feeling about the interaction. "Frustrated but not surprised," I admitted. "My mother has always needed to believe in a certain narrative about me, and evidence that contradicts it gets dismissed or reframed. But my father speaking up was unexpected. Maybe there's more awareness there than I gave him credit for." Vincent squeezed my hand. "You don't need their validation or understanding," he reminded me gently. "You know your truth and you made the right choice for yourself. That's what matters." His words settled something in my chest that had been tight since my parents' arrival. He was right. I'd spent too much of my life seeking approval from people who would never offer it freely. Building my own life based on my values rather than their expectations was the greatest gift I'd given myself, more valuable than any external validation. The morning of our wedding arrived with perfect spring weather, clear skies and temperatures warm enough for the outdoor ceremony we'd planned. Kelsey arrived early to help me dress, and we laughed together in Vincent's guest room as I struggled with the buttons on my simple ivory dress. "Nothing like my first wedding," I observed, thinking of the elaborate gown and cathedral ceremony that had marked my marriage to Derek. "This feels more authentic somehow, less about the show and more about the substance." Kelsey hugged me carefully to avoid wrinkling the dress. "You've come so far from the woman who called me crying from a Denver motel," she said. "I'm proud of you for not just surviving but actually thriving and building something beautiful." Her words touched me deeply, recognition from someone who'd witnessed my journey from its lowest point to this moment of hope and commitment. The ceremony itself was brief but meaningful, held under blooming cherry trees with only our closest people surrounding us. Vincent's brother served as best man while Kelsey stood beside me, both of them grinning as we exchanged vows we'd written ourselves. I promised Vincent honesty, partnership, and support through whatever challenges life brought. He promised me respect, encouragement, and a love that celebrated rather than diminished who I was. When we kissed as a married couple, I felt none of the performance anxiety that had characterized my first wedding, only genuine joy and gratitude for the man I'd chosen and who had chosen me. The reception was held at a nearby restaurant that had closed its private dining room for our small group. We'd opted for family-style dining, everyone sharing platters of food and passing bottles of wine, the atmosphere casual and warm. Toasts from friends and family were heartfelt without being maudlin, celebrating our relationship while acknowledging that both of us had traveled difficult roads to reach this point. My father surprised me by requesting to say a few words, standing somewhat awkwardly with his wine glass raised. "I haven't always understood my daughter's choices," he began, "but watching her today I see a woman who knows herself and has built a life that reflects her values. Vincent, you're a fortunate man to have found a partner with such strength and clarity." To Natalie and Vincent, may your marriage be everything you hope it will be. The toast was simple but sincere, and I felt unexpected emotion welling up at this rare display of paternal approval. My mother clapped politely, but her expression remained guarded, unable or unwilling to fully embrace this version of me that didn't conform to her expectations. I decided in that moment to stop hoping for her acceptance and simply appreciate what my father had offered, a small gesture that meant more because it was genuine rather than obligatory. Vincent and I spent our honeymoon in a cabin on the Oregon coast, a week of solitude where we could simply be together without the demands of work or social obligations. We took long walks on windswept beaches, cooked meals together in the cabin's small kitchen, and talked about our hopes for the future. The conversation turned serious one evening as we sat watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of gold and crimson. "I want to expand the agency," Vincent said, "not immediately but within the next 2 years. Bring on more senior staff so I'm not the only creative director. Eventually I'd like to step back from day-to-day operations and focus more on strategic vision and new business development." His eyes met mine with careful attention. "What do you want, Natalie? Not just professionally but in the bigger picture of your life?" The question deserved thoughtful consideration. I'd spent so much energy on survival and rebuilding that I hadn't given myself permission to dream beyond the immediate future. "I want to teach," I said slowly, working through the idea as I spoke. "Maybe adjunct classes at first while maintaining freelance work. I want to help emerging designers find their creative voice without sacrificing their integrity to commercial pressures. And I want to keep making art, real art that challenges me and expresses something meaningful beyond aesthetic appeal." Vincent nodded thoughtfully. "Those goals feel achievable if we're strategic about it. The agency expansion would give us more financial stability, which could support you transitioning to part-time and pursuing teaching opportunities. We'd need to be smart about managing finances and maybe delay some other goals, but I don't see why it couldn't work." His immediate support for my aspirations, the lack of any suggestion that my dreams should be secondary to his, felt revolutionary after years with Derek, who'd treated my artistic ambitions as hobbies rather than legitimate pursuits. "What other goals would we be delaying?" I asked, curious what he'd been considering. Vincent hesitated before answering. "I've been thinking about kids," he admitted. "Not immediately but eventually. I'm 38 and you're 36, so if we want children we should probably consider timeline. But I also don't want to pressure you or assume that's something you want. We've never really discussed it beyond vague future references." The topic hung in the air between us, weighted with implications. I'd always imagined having children someday, but my marriage to Derek had never felt stable enough to bring a child into. "Do you want kids?" I asked, needing to understand his position before examining my own. Vincent gazed out at the darkening ocean before responding. "I think I do," he said carefully. "But not in the way I thought I wanted them when I was younger. I don't need children to feel complete or successful, and I wouldn't want to have them unless both partners were fully committed and ready. If you decided you didn't want kids, I could make peace with that because what we have together matters more than any hypothetical future. But if you're open to it, I'd like us to be parents together eventually." His answer was characteristically thoughtful and honest, presenting his desires without demanding I conform to them. "I am open to it," I told him. "But I need time to establish my teaching career first and maybe feel more settled in this version of my life. Could we revisit the conversation in a year or two?" Vincent smiled with obvious relief. "That sounds perfect. No rush, no pressure, just something we're both aware of as a possibility." We spent the rest of the evening in comfortable silence, both of us content with the understanding we'd reached. The ability to discuss difficult topics without conflict or coercion felt like evidence that we'd built something fundamentally different from my first marriage, a partnership based on mutual respect rather than power dynamics or unspoken resentments. Returning to Portland after the honeymoon brought us back to the realities of work and daily life, but now as a married couple navigating shared responsibilities and merged households. I officially moved into Vincent's house, which became our house, and we spent weekends combining our belongings and making the space reflect both our personalities. My art supplies took over the spare bedroom that became my studio, while Vincent's extensive book collection expanded to fill built-in shelves we installed in the living room. Work at Horizon Digital Solutions remained engaging as I balanced my art director responsibilities with beginning to develop educational content. Vincent supported my gradual transition by hiring an additional senior designer, taking pressure off me to be available for every project. I started reaching out to local colleges and design schools, introducing myself to department heads and expressing interest in adjunct teaching opportunities. The process was slower than I'd hoped, but several programs indicated they might have openings for the following academic year. Summer brought unexpected news when Kelsey called to announce she'd been offered a job transfer to Seattle. "I'm considering taking it," she said, excitement evident in her voice. "The position is a significant promotion and Seattle's only 3 hours from you. We could actually see each other regularly instead of coordinating annual visits." I encouraged her enthusiastically, thrilled at the prospect of having my closest friend nearby after years of long-distance friendship. Kelsey made the move in August and we helped her settle into her new apartment, spending a weekend assembling furniture and exploring her new neighborhood. Having her within driving distance transformed my sense of community and belonging. She became a regular presence at dinner parties Vincent and I hosted, a bridge between my past and present who knew both versions of me and loved them equally. Fall arrived with its characteristic Portland beauty, trees transforming into flames of red and gold. I received an email from Portland Community College offering me an adjunct position teaching Introduction to Graphic Design for the spring semester. The class would meet twice weekly in the evenings, leaving my days free for agency work and personal projects. I accepted immediately, exhilarated and terrified by this new professional direction. Vincent celebrated the news by taking me to dinner at the restaurant where we'd had our first official date, a small intimate place with excellent food and low lighting that encouraged conversation. "I'm proud of you," he said over appetizers. "You've built a career from nothing in less than 3 years, established yourself as a respected designer, and now you're creating opportunities to give back to emerging artists. That takes courage and determination most people don't have." His words meant more because they came from someone who understood the professional world and wasn't simply offering empty praise. "I couldn't have done it without your support," I told him honestly. "You gave me stability when I needed it and freedom when I was ready for it." Vincent reached across the table for my hand. "We gave each other what we needed," he corrected. "That's how partnerships work when they're built right." The remainder of the year passed in productive contentment as I prepared course materials for my spring teaching position while managing art director responsibilities and developing new artwork for a solo show a local gallery had proposed for the following summer. The pace was demanding but energizing rather than exhausting, probably because each component aligned with my values and interests rather than existing solely to pay bills. The holidays brought the question of family gatherings and the complicated dynamics that entailed. Vincent's family was warm and welcoming, treating me like I'd always been part of their circle. My parents sent a card but declined our invitation to visit for Thanksgiving, claiming prior commitments. I felt relieved more than disappointed, grateful to spend the holiday with people who actually wanted to celebrate together rather than enduring tense meals with family who remained ambivalent about my choices. My teaching debut in January exceeded my hopes and fears simultaneously. The students were engaged and talented, eager to learn but also challenging my explanations and pushing back against conventional wisdom in ways that forced me to articulate my design philosophy more clearly. I loved the energy of the classroom, the satisfaction of watching someone grasp a concept they'd been struggling with, the reminder that creative work could be taught and nurtured rather than simply existing as innate talent. Vincent attended my final class of the semester, sitting quietly in the back while I led students through portfolio reviews and offered guidance for their continued development. Afterward, as we walked to our car, he asked what I'd learned from the experience. "That I want to do more of this," I answered immediately. "One class isn't enough. I want to develop curriculum, maybe eventually pursue full-time teaching with a lighter client load." The realization had been building throughout the semester but crystallized in that moment. Vincent nodded without surprise. "I thought you might say that. So let's figure out how to make it happen." We discussed logistics as we drove home, considering financial implications and timeline for transitioning my career focus. The conversation was pragmatic but supportive, two partners working together to achieve shared and individual goals without either person's dreams being sacrificed for the other's. Spring arrived with its annual display of cherry blossoms, marking a year since Vincent and I had married. We celebrated our anniversary quietly with dinner at home, reflecting on how much had happened in 12 months. I'd established myself as a teacher, completed a body of artwork I was genuinely proud of, and felt more grounded in my identity than ever before. Vincent had successfully expanded the agency, bringing on 2 senior staff members and beginning to step back from day-to-day creative work to focus on business development. The solo exhibition of my artwork opened in June at a respected gallery in Portland's Arts District. The show was titled Reconstruction and featured pieces exploring themes of identity, transformation, and the process of rebuilding after loss. The opening reception drew an impressive crowd including collectors, critics, fellow artists, and friends who'd supported my journey. I stood nervously as people examined my work, the visual representation of my most vulnerable experiences now displayed for public consumption and judgment. Vincent stayed close but not hovering, allowing me space to interact with gallery visitors while providing silent support through his presence. Several pieces sold during the opening, including the burning house painting that had launched my artistic practice. A local art critic approached me near the end of the evening, asking questions about my process and inspirations. Her review, published the following week, was thoughtful and complimentary, noting the emotional honesty of the work and its technical sophistication. The exhibition's success validated my belief that I could sustain both commercial and fine art practices, that these weren't competing interests but complementary expressions of my creativity. Gallery representation led to additional opportunities including a commission for a corporate collection and invitations to participate in group shows. My artistic career was beginning to support itself financially, reducing reliance on agency work and creating space to pursue teaching more extensively. Summer brought another significant development when Portland State University contacted me about a full-time faculty position in their design department. The role would involve teaching 3 courses per semester, curriculum development, student advising, and maintaining an active creative practice. The salary was less than I earned at the agency but included benefits and the stability of academic employment. I discussed the opportunity extensively with Vincent, weighing the pros and cons of such a significant career shift. "You light up when you talk about teaching," Vincent observed during one of these conversations. "I don't see that same energy when you're discussing client work anymore, even projects you enjoy. That tells me where your passion actually is." His insight was accurate and I realized I'd already made the decision emotionally even if I was still processing it logically. I accepted the position and gave notice at Horizon Digital Solutions, transitioning my art director responsibilities over 2 months to ensure a smooth succession. My final day at the agency was bittersweet, leaving work that had provided stability during a crucial rebuilding period but also feeling ready to step fully into my new identity as an artist and educator. Vincent threw a farewell party at the office, and my colleagues presented me with a custom portfolio case engraved with a quote I'd shared during a team meeting about the importance of creative integrity. The gesture touched me deeply, evidence that I'd made a meaningful impact during my time there. The academic year began in September with fresh energy and expanded responsibilities. I taught Introduction to Graphic Design, Typography, and a senior seminar on ethical design practices. The workload was substantial but rewarding in ways agency work had never been. I was shaping the next generation of designers, helping them develop not just technical skills but critical thinking about the role of design in society. Several students showed exceptional promise, and I found myself mentoring them beyond classroom hours, offering portfolio advice and professional guidance. Vincent and I had been married for 18 months when we revisited the conversation about children. We'd both achieved significant professional goals, our marriage felt solid and secure, and we'd created a life with enough stability to consider expanding our family. The discussion happened organically one Sunday morning over coffee, both of us acknowledging we felt ready to try for a baby if the timing was right. Unlike my first marriage where such conversations had been fraught with anxiety about whether we were prepared, this felt like a natural next step in our partnership. Vincent had no illusions about parenthood being easy or convenient, and I had no romantic fantasies about how a baby would somehow complete us. We were 2 whole people choosing to create a third person, aware of the challenges but confident in our ability to navigate them together. We spent several months preparing practically and emotionally, ensuring our finances were stable, discussing parenting philosophies and expectations, and making space in our lives for the changes a child would bring. I stopped taking on freelance projects beyond a few select clients, creating margin in my schedule for pregnancy and eventual parental leave. Vincent restructured his role at the agency to allow for more flexibility and work-from-home capability. I discovered I was pregnant in February, a cold gray morning when I took a test simply because my period was late. The positive result felt surreal and overwhelming in equal measure. Vincent cried when I told him, genuine tears of joy that made me love him even more. We agreed to keep the news private through the first trimester, sharing only with Kelsey, who screamed with excitement over the phone and immediately began planning a baby shower. The pregnancy proceeded without major complications, though the typical symptoms of exhaustion and nausea made teaching challenging some days. My students were understanding when I occasionally needed to sit during lectures or take breaks, and my department had assured me they would accommodate whatever I needed. Vincent was attentive without being overbearing, asking how I felt but not treating me as fragile, excited about becoming a father but not making my pregnancy entirely about his experience. We learned we were having a daughter at the 20-week ultrasound, and the information made everything feel more concrete. Vincent suggested the name Maya, which I loved immediately for its simplicity and cross-cultural resonance. Planning for her arrival became a shared project, converting the guest room into a nursery, attending childbirth classes together, reading parenting books and discussing which approaches aligned with our values. Summer arrived with my due date approaching and the academic year concluded. I'd arranged for a semester of parental leave with plans to return to teaching in January with a reduced course load. The gallery postponed a planned exhibition to the following year, understanding that new motherhood would limit my studio time. Everything was organized and prepared, or as prepared as one can be for the unpredictable arrival of a first child. Maya arrived 3 days past her due date in early August after 14 hours of labor that tested my endurance and Vincent's ability to provide support without hovering. Holding her for the first time, seeing Vincent's expression as he touched her tiny hand, I felt overwhelming gratitude for the journey that had led to this moment. If Derek hadn't betrayed me, if I hadn't left Denver, if I hadn't taken the risk of starting over in Portland, this perfect small person wouldn't exist. My greatest pain had somehow led to my greatest joy. The early weeks of parenthood were exhausting and beautiful and terrifying in ways no amount of preparation could have anticipated. Vincent and I tag-teamed feedings and diaper changes, learned to function on fragmented sleep, and marveled at every tiny developmental milestone. Our relationship was tested by the stress and sleep deprivation, but the foundation we'd built held strong. We communicated clearly about needs and frustrations, shared responsibilities equitably, and supported each other through the challenging transition. Kelsey visited frequently, bringing meals and offering to hold Maya so I could shower or nap. She was a godsend during those first overwhelming months, providing practical help without judgment or unsolicited advice. "You're a natural," she told me one afternoon as she watched me nurse Maya with confidence I'd gradually developed. "More importantly, you and Vincent are genuinely partners in this. That kid is lucky to have you both." My parents met Maya when she was 6 weeks old, making a brief visit to Portland that felt obligatory rather than joyful. My mother held her granddaughter with visible discomfort, offering comments about feeding schedules and sleep training that I deflected politely. My father seemed more genuinely interested, asking questions about her personality and development, but the visit remained strained. They left after 2 days, and I felt relief rather than sadness at their departure. Fall arrived with Maya settling into more predictable rhythms and me beginning to contemplate my return to teaching. The prospect of balancing motherhood, teaching, and artistic practice felt daunting, but I'd learned I was capable of more than I'd once believed possible. Vincent had returned to work but maintained flexibility, often working from home to share childcare responsibilities. We hired a part-time nanny for the days I'd be teaching, a warm grandmother who came highly recommended and clearly loved children. I returned to campus in January for a new semester, teaching 2 courses instead of my previous 3, finding the balance challenging but manageable. My students seemed charmed by occasional references to my daughter, the acknowledgement that their professor had a full life beyond academia. The adjustment took time, but gradually we found our rhythm as a family of 3. Maya was an easy baby, generally happy and curious about her surroundings. Vincent proved to be a devoted father, changing diapers without complaint and singing off-key lullabies during nighttime wakings. We took turns managing midnight feedings and early morning wake-ups, functioning as the team we'd always been even when exhausted and overwhelmed. Spring brought Maya's first birthday along with reflection on how dramatically life had changed in 12 months. We threw a small party with close friends and family, watching our daughter demolish a smash cake with enthusiastic joy. Vincent and I exchanged glances across the chaos of wrapping paper and frosting, silently acknowledging how fortunate we were. That evening, after guests had departed and Maya was asleep, Vincent and I sat together on our back porch as we'd done countless times before. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" he asked quietly. "If your first marriage hadn't ended, if we hadn't met, if we'd made different choices along the way?" I considered the question seriously before answering. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But not with regret. Everything that happened, even the painful parts, brought me here. I wouldn't trade this life for anything, not even to avoid the hurt that came before it." Vincent kissed my temple gently. "I feel the same way. Sometimes our worst experiences lead to our best outcomes if we're brave enough to keep moving forward." His words resonated deeply because they captured the essential truth of my journey. Leaving Derek had felt like an ending, the destruction of everything I'd built my life around. But it had actually been a beginning, the first step toward discovering who I was when I wasn't trying to fit someone else's expectations. Portland, Vincent, my teaching career, Maya, all of it had grown from the ashes of that earlier life. Maya was 18 months old when I received an unexpected email that would force me to confront the past I'd carefully compartmentalized. The subject line read "Business Conference Invitation," but opening it revealed an invitation to speak at a digital marketing summit in Denver. The conference organizers had seen my work and wanted me to present on ethical design practices and creative integrity in commercial spaces. The speaking fee was generous and the professional opportunity significant, but the location made my stomach twist with complicated emotions. I showed the email to Vincent that evening while we cleaned up after Maya's dinner. He read it carefully before looking at me with understanding. "You don't have to go if it feels too difficult," he said. "But you also shouldn't let Derek's presence in that city prevent you from professional opportunities. It's been almost 4 years since you left. Maybe enough time has passed that it wouldn't affect you the way you fear." His perspective was measured and non-judgmental, leaving the decision entirely to me. I sat with the invitation for several days, weighing my reluctance against my professional aspirations. Finally I accepted, reasoning that I'd built an impressive life completely independent of my past, and returning to Denver as a successful professor, artist, and speaker would demonstrate how thoroughly I'd moved beyond that painful chapter. Vincent offered to join me for support, but we decided he should stay home with Maya rather than disrupting her routine for my professional commitment. The conference was scheduled for late September, and as the date approached I felt increasing anxiety mixed with curiosity about how it would feel to be back in Denver. I hadn't maintained contact with anyone from that period except Kelsey, who'd also moved away. The city existed in my memory as the site of betrayal and loss, frozen in time at my lowest moment. Returning as Professor Harper, invited speaker and established artist, felt like closing a circle I hadn't known remained open. I flew into Denver on a Thursday afternoon and checked into the conference hotel, a modern building downtown nowhere near the neighborhood where Derek and I had lived. The city looked simultaneously familiar and foreign, changed by construction and development but still recognizably the place I'd called home. I spent Friday morning attending conference sessions and networking with other speakers, finding genuine engagement in professional conversations that had nothing to do with my personal history. My presentation was scheduled for Saturday afternoon, a prime slot that indicated the conference organizers valued my contribution. I'd prepared thoroughly, creating a slide deck that showcased my teaching philosophy and artwork while discussing the importance of maintaining creative integrity in commercial design work. The session was well attended and the audience engaged, asking thoughtful questions and approaching me afterward with business cards and invitations to connect further. As I packed up my materials after the presentation, a woman approached who'd been sitting in the back of the room. "Natalie?" she said hesitantly. "I'm not sure if you remember me. I'm Vanessa Cole. I work with Derek at Pacific Tech Ventures." My heart stopped as I recognized the name from the fake profile I'd created years ago, the identity I'd used to expose Derek's infidelity. But this was clearly a real person, not a manufactured persona. Seeing my confusion, she continued quickly. "I know this is strange, but I wanted to thank you. About 2 years ago, Derek was fired from Pacific Tech for creating fake profiles and harassing female employees through dating apps. Several women came forward with evidence and the company investigated. During that process, someone found screenshots of conversations with a Vanessa Cole profile that turned out to be fake, created to catch him. I later learned you were the one who made it. Your documentation helped establish a pattern of behavior that protected other women from what you experienced. The information crashed over me in waves. Derek had continued his deceptive behavior, escalating it to workplace harassment. My screenshots, taken in a moment of pain and determination, had served a purpose beyond my own divorce. They'd helped protect other women from a man who clearly had ongoing issues with honesty and boundaries. "I'm sorry you went through that," I managed to say. "And I'm glad the evidence helped stop him from hurting others." Vanessa nodded with obvious relief at my response. "I also wanted you to know that your presentation today was incredible. The way you talk about integrity and authenticity in creative work really resonated. It's clear you've built something meaningful from whatever you experienced." She handed me her card and we exchanged polite goodbyes, but the encounter left me shaken. That evening I called Vincent from my hotel room and told him about the unexpected meeting. He listened quietly before responding. "You did the right thing back then by documenting everything and protecting yourself legally. The fact that it also helped other women is powerful, but it wasn't your responsibility to save anyone else. You saved yourself, and that's what mattered most." His words helped me process the strange convergence of past and present, the realization that my actions had ripples I'd never anticipated. Sunday morning before my flight home, I drove past the house Derek and I had shared. New owners had painted it a different color and updated the landscaping. It looked smaller than I remembered, just an ordinary house where ordinary people lived their lives. I felt nothing looking at it, no anger or grief or nostalgia. That chapter was truly closed, those experiences integrated into my history but no longer defining my present. Flying back to Portland, I reflected on what the Denver trip had revealed. I'd returned to the site of my greatest failure and discovered it no longer had power over me. Derek was just a man who'd made destructive choices and faced consequences for them. I was a woman who'd survived betrayal, rebuilt her life with intention and courage, and created something beautiful from the wreckage. The contrast felt like final vindication, not because Derek had failed but because I had genuinely thrived. Vincent and Maya met me at the airport, and seeing them waiting made my throat tight with emotion. This was my real life, the one I'd fought for and built deliberately. Derek's betrayal had set me free to discover what I actually wanted rather than what I thought I should want. The fake profile I'd created to test him had been the catalyst that launched me toward authenticity in every area of my life. As we drove home with Maya babbling happily in her car seat, Vincent reached over and squeezed my hand. "Welcome back," he said simply. "I'm home," I replied, and meant it completely. Not just physically present but fully inhabiting a life that reflected my values and nurtured my growth. The screenshots I'd taken years ago in heartbreak and anger had served their purpose legally and apparently helped others beyond my knowledge. But their greatest value was in giving me the evidence I needed to trust my instincts and walk away from something that diminished me towards something that celebrated who I truly was. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.